Hey everyone, so I am starting a new project. It is the holiday, so we have 2 weeks, or I have 2 weeks, and in that time, I plan to take this drawing behind me into a full-on painting. So I'm gonna take you guys through the journey on how I take this black and white image into a full-on colored painting, and I'll show you some tools and techniques later on. Like if you starting something from scratch and you don't know what colors, what color palette to use, then I have some tools and techniques that will kind of help you out on that. But I have not painted in 4 weeks, guys. 4 weeks, and I'm very nervous and very anxious. I don't know about you, but when I haven't done anything creatively for a very long time, I start to feel anxious, nervous, like the procrastination just carries on increasing because I feel like, oh, I don't know how to pick up a pencil. Like all my XP, all my 10 years plus experience has just gone out the window and I'm starting from zero. And it is an irrational fear. I do know that, but it's just something that eats up inside of me. So I try to avoid situations like that by staying consistent, always having another project after I finish the last one. But for some reason, this time, burnout happens and, you sort of fall back into bad habits. But 2025 is upon us and we're definitely going to kickstart that year and also end this year on a creative high note. So stay tuned. All right, so we are starting off with the background, and I'm using Schminker Total Cover range, which are a range of super opaque inks for airbrushing. And opaque inks and paints are great for backgrounds because you can get even coverage quite quickly. I then shortly after moved on to the moon, and I used a couple of references to get a better understanding of what the texture of the moon kind of looks like. And there is a website that I use called Pexel, and they're great. They are a website that offers free stock images. Photos are in high resolution and contrast, and it's really good resource material. So I found a couple images of a moon that I liked. And so, yeah, you can see I'm using different tools like a texture stencil. I use different shaped brushes, and I'm only using a transparent gray for the first pass of this. So this I would consider as my underpainting. And an underpainting is really useful when you want to establish those underlying structures like the form, shape, and contrast. And also in this case, texture. So I wanted to establish the texture first, and then would move on by layering and tinting the moons until we get a blood moon effect. So you can see here on the left hand side that I'm actually using an opaque white paint to create the glow, but also to soften out those textures because theoretically the moon is in space. Even if it looks really close in the sky, to us as a viewer, technically you wouldn't be able to see all the textures and details. So the opaque paint is there to soften all of that. And then on the right side, you can see I'm using another transparent paint called Schminker Candy Poppy Red. Now the candies are a dye and they're super transparent. So I could theoretically layer infinite amount of colors to get a deeper and more saturated look. I then jumped around and I had more footage in between, but that file kind of got lost. So we've concluded the moon, and we've moved on to the foreground. So I've started doing the underpainting um, of the main character, and we're using a transparent umber by Schminker. So you'll hear me use certain brands, like I usually jump between Schminker and Golden High Flow. Those are like the two brands in the UK at least, mainly for airbrushing. I know there's some others like Createx, and I do have a few, but the imports, they tend to be more expensive over here in the UK, so I don't have much of them. But the same rules apply with the underpainting for the moon. It's the same rules I'm applying for the facial features. I'm using this transparent color to create an underlying structure, to establish those values, to establish the form, like the eye socket, the eyebrows, the side of the nose. I'm focusing on all of that before we later, in another video, go ahead and add in the skin tone. The main challenges that I found with this painting, particularly in the beginning, was getting the right contrast, because this was meant to be a nighttime scene. This character is standing in the dead of night with, a moonlit background behind her. Theoretically, because the light source is coming behind the subject itself would be silhouetted. Silhouetted, is that a word? We're calling it a word. It would be silhouetted. But if I did that, the viewer wouldn't be able to see anything. So I had to kind of create some imaginary light source, but also still give the atmosphere and the feeling like this character is standing in the middle of the night in the cover of darkness. So yeah, finding that balance was quite challenging. I also thought that using this transparent umber was a great choice. Usually I use a more warmer tone for the underpainting, a warmer brown shades for the skin tone. But because, again, it's nighttime, I was conscientious. I think I'm saying that right. About, not having the subject look too vibrant, too colorful. Again, it's nighttime, there's not much light, so the colors are going to be muted. So I wanted to make sure all throughout the painting that I am using muted. But I was pretty excited about this piece, especially it being the last painting of 2024. Yeah, I was really excited. It was not on my bingo card, really. I had other things planned to paint, but this idea, this concept kind of came to my head. It is quite dark of a theme, which I'll explain in a later video, but I was so excited. And I think what excited me was the challenge that, I haven't painted a night scene before. I haven't painted a moon. I haven't, achieved certain things in painting, and I get to explore all of that in this piece here. But also, yeah, and obviously now this recording is in 2025. So I guess, how I want to end the video is, asking you guys, what are your 2025 resolutions, if you have any? They don't have to be art related, but in my case, mine are art related. So I did have a gallery just before the New Year's and Christmas. I'm in 2024, and I want to continue putting myself out there and exhibit more work in 2025. And yeah, just develop my artistic practice more, be more consistent with YouTube. So yeah, but let me know what your goals and resolutions are for 2025.